Hey everyone, and welcome to the August edition of 3030. I am Pat Reinhardt, conductor, and thank you as always for spending your very valuable time with me on this Thursday afternoon on a shockingly cool August day here in Long Island. I hope the weather is as nice here where you are, and let's talk about what we're going to be talking about today, right? So we're going to be talking about the bug that literally broke the internet. Google had a little bit of a misfire the other day, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about links again, because again, in my as folks who have been joining the program, I've been confirming very basic, like kind of 101 things that a lot of people talk about that Google has been addressing lately. One is about outbound links. Today, and then, another one is actually about guest post links. So I actually have two links topics today, which, as everyone knows, is strange for me because I usually don't talk about links that much. But again, those are two other things we're going to talk about. There was a test out there where Google tested the People Also Ask box in the right panel. I actually didn't hate it, so we're going to talk about that. And then I'm going to go into something that came up, internally, for me, this week, about building things and building processes and systems, and how you should not be afraid of doing that, and how it could be very good for your career and your mindset, but also for your company. But let's get into it because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, Google broke the internet. So basically, on August 10th, everyone was up in arms because it appeared that one of the largest Google updates in recent history had been rolling out. Rankings were literally everywhere. SERPs were all over the place, and a lot of chatter around the industry was that there was something wrong, and a lot of people start talking about, like, was this a bug? Because it was so big and actually kind of out of character for Google at this point. But everyone was very nervous because no one really knew what was going on. No one had said anything, right? So the big question, was it a bug? And the answer, it was, thankfully. And the good thing is that Google addressed it very quickly. So as you can see to the right, Barry Schwartz actually spoke to a Google, heard from a Google representative who said that it was indeed a bug and that it was being fixed. So that was the first, the acceptance by Google that it was indeed a bug and something on their end. And then John Mueller of Google, said that he did not have all the details yet, so it seems like it was a glitch on their side, and it had already been fixed in the meantime. For the most part, it has come down to the fact that this was one of those things where a lot of people thought just a huge algorithm update was rolling out, and it was like the impact from it was so vast and so wild that I was actually sitting there watching some stuff, like a lot of traffic and a lot of rankings going up and down. And it was really interesting because I was clicking around and I was like, oh my God, like some of my sites were gone, or some of my sites had, shot up. And, I went through about probably like 200 different keywords that I just spot checked. And it was all over the place, like stuff like some of our customers have owned for years were just gone. And then all of a sudden, some other terms that we thought were moonshots, like, hey, we're never going to rank for this, was all of a sudden at like number one, number two. We were like, oh my God, what is happening here? But then it was very short-lived. It didn't take that long, and then everything pretty much went back to exactly where it was. So thankfully that was the case. For me personally, it reminded me of when, the Panda update first rolled out back in 2008. I believe it was 2008. And I remember that day. I was sitting with, one of my colleagues who I still work with, to this day, a conductor. And we were looking at stuff, and we were just watching everything going up and down and all around, sites, getting demolished, sites coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden becoming heroes. And at the end of the day, we were like, holy crap, this feels like this again. I remember he actually called me, and he was like, hey man, he was like, hey man, like, do you feel like this is back in the day? And I was like, oh my God, it does feel like that. And I was like, and I was like preparing myself for a roller coaster. And I was also kind of shocked because I was like, oh, come on, Googs, what's going on? You don't do this to us anymore that much. But at the end of the day, it turns out it was a bug. They did break it, and that's okay. They addressed it. It didn't last that long. thank the Lord that that's what it was, because I was having a lot of palpitations there, for a few minutes. But we're all good and everything's okay. And just another example of why 2020 has simply just been an awesome year. That was just another one where I was like, oh God, what's next? So moving on to that. So this was an interesting one. I came across this, on Search Engine Roundtable, and it was interesting conversation happening because I had actually had a customer reach out to me about this 2 weeks prior to me seeing that article, which is a lot of ways where I decide on what I'm going to talk about from month to month. It's mainly based on conversations I've had with customers and answering questions that they, that they've been asking, and me saying, hey, maybe people out there want the answer to this. So one that was interesting was that, one thing that's interesting is that, a lot of people have talked about this for many years. Like, can you have too many outbound links? So for anyone who doesn't know what an outbound link is, it is, a link that is on your site pointing to another site, right? So a link that's pointing out to another site. So so not links coming in, not, so different. You sending your equity to other companies or other sites because you're linking out to them. And the question that comes up and gets talked about is that, like whether or not do you get dinged basically for linking out of your site too much, right? Or having too many of these types of links. And, of course, like for me, I always say like, I'm like, why would anyone think this? But again, I always have to catch myself. And I think I pretty much, I talk about this maybe once a month now on the program, is that I always have to take a step back and remember that there are many people out there who are just getting into SEO, who are just learning about SEO. And this is one of those things where, it actually becomes a fair question, right? And the whole thing is that, for many years we have pontificated about this, right? Is that if you link out a lot, there's two ways that I've always looked at it, right? Does Google use that as a signal that maybe you're selling links? Like let's say you're linking out to sites that are not relevant to your site, or you're just linking out a lot, or you're linking out to multiple different sites and maybe linking out from one article that doesn't have anything to do with the page that you're linking out to. And maybe you have a great reason for it. I don't know. But does Google use does Google use that as a signal and say like, oh God, are they selling links, and does that hurt you, right? And then the other line of thinking is that, if you link out too much, are you depleting your own authority because you're sending so much of it out that you're not holding enough in? Now, of course, these two arguments don't really hold that much water. Obviously, it doesn't really make sense, right? And you can see here that John Mueller actually, shut this myth down, or at least this conversation, that he wasn't aware of anything like that. And he even went on to say that usually the problem is more of the rest of the site when there's a lack of real, unique, compelling, high-quality content rather than the links. And John's been kind of down on links lately, which is interesting. But back to the original point is that this really, doesn't have, hold much water. It doesn't, you can't necessarily link out too much. But, it all comes down to when you link out to someone else, you're helping out that page and that, and that site. But there's no way that you're going to get hurt, quote unquote, by this, or, there's no way that you could, it doesn't seem like you would diminish your authority, or, you would get dinged by Google for linking out too much. So I just felt that this was one of those things that I've talked about over the years, and, I've had many debates about at conferences, and, so I think it was interesting to bring up. But if anyone was ever wondering that, John, came out and then kind of confirmed that, again, another Google confirm on something that's been talked about for many years. But, a lot of times people would say, like, hey, man, like, come on, like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would that happen? But, again, you always have to remember that some people who are just getting into it, they might think this. I certainly did at one point, and like I said, I've debated it for many years, and I understand why people think of that. But just something that I found interesting that I thought would be fun to share, and just a good conversation, but also just a good confirmation, as I've been doing the last several months, just confirming that Google says these things and confirms that that is not, in fact, the case. So you cannot have too many outbound links. So moving on to the next thing. So Google testing. So someone called a test of Google, testing the People Also Ask panel on the right-hand side. As we all know, Google, doesn't have a ton of stuff on the right-hand side. When it comes to snippets like this, usually dot pals over there, anything, map information, things of that nature. But I actually don't hate this. One of the things that I talk to a lot of people, I actually don't like the people also ask experience in the search, right? I don't like that you have to scroll down and you have to, and then when you click it, you have to keep scrolling down and over and things of that nature. I actually would love if Google did this for people also ask, if it made it relevant. Now the other, kind of side of that conversation is, hey man, so this would just so every query is going to have a people also ask, and also what if, something does pull up Knowledge Panel or something else, right? What do you do with the people also ask then? Do you put it back on the left-hand side? So listen, I understand, why some people would not like this. I actually had several conversations about this, and a lot of people were just like, yeah, this looks terrible. Yeah, this stinks and all this stuff, but I actually don't hate it. I actually like it over here because listen, it all depends on also kind of, it depends on your perspective on it and also how you search. I tend to scroll up and down on the SERPs as I go through, as I look through and absorb what a SERP looks like. And the people also ask, and again, you have to keep clicking it, it keeps expanding and things of that nature. I actually would like, if I was searching for something or wanting to understand if I was searching for a topic and, what types of questions or other questions people are asking about that topic, I think I would like this setup just because I would absorb it, right? It's just the way that I absorb it. And I think on my side, but I think at the end of the day, this is one of those things that this is a personal preference, but I actually wouldn't hate if Google made this permanent. Again, that's just the way that I search and the way that I'm looking for things. I go up and down on page one, and I like to kind of absorb what types of feature, types of snippets are there, what types of carousels are there. What is the, what does the topic really be pulling back? What should it pull back, in my opinion? But also, I go to the people also ask a lot because I believe when I'm trying to learn about a space or learn about a topic, that people also ask really helps me absorb the types of questions that people are asking, but also just what do people really care about when someone Googles something or this particular thing that I've just Googled. I mean, Mint Oreo cookies obviously is something that I don't know I would Google and want to understand what types of questions people are asking about those cookies. But then again, I don't necessarily work with anyone who has Mint Oreo cookies as a product. So I guess that would probably change my perspective on it. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to behavior, right? This actually is conducive to my behavior as I go through a SERP. So I would be interested to hear how other people feel about this. I would love your opinion. I probably should have put a poll in here, but I always forget to do those. But I'd be interested to see, would this be conducive to the way that you search, or would this be conducive to the way that you do research? Because really, for the folks on listening to this program, that's really what it's about, right? It's when I Google something, I'm usually doing research on that topic, and I'm wanting to understand what the different types of SERPs look like, and the people also asking being right there instead of having to scroll up and then expand it and then scroll around. It would just save me time and just be a better be a better user experience for me. So maybe I'm just selfish for this, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I actually don't hate this, and I hope that they do this, but I know that they won't. So that's okay. And moving on. So another links thing. Pat, why are you talking about links so much? It's one of these things where in my my endless journey to continuously get folks kind of up to speed on Google confirming things again. So on August 9th, right, Google's John Mueller was asked, using guest posts, as a link building strategy, which I always find funny. I always find it funny when people ask, Google folks about link building strategies and if it's a good one or a bad one. But for this guy, he just came out and said, hey, I think most people use it for link building, backlinks, and Google does give it preference to domains with more backlinks. This was the reply that spurred John to answer. But there's this whole thread about this, about people basically just like asking like search liaison and Gary Isles about about like link building strategies, and John basically just came out and said those links have zero value. It's a waste of time if you're just doing it for the links. Which again, I don't think is surprising for anybody, but guest posting is there's a debate there, right? Because like for me, I always say guest posts are good, like not the links, but like guest posting, getting your content onto a partner site or onto a publisher site. It's just the exposure of it, right? It's not necessarily about the link for me. It's about, hey, listen, I got out there, I've made a friend in my industry, and I'm using their site to promote my own, but also using my site to promote them. It's a two-way street. There's a lot of harmony there. From a link building perspective, everyone here knows my feelings on link building in general. But at the end of the day, links are important. But this is interesting because saying they have zero value is it's funny because it's just so blunt of him to say it. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who simply don't believe this. One of those people is our good friend Rand Fishkin, who actually said, if I were still an SEO, I'd go test this ASAP. $50 says the Google rep is wrong. I see links in guest editorial that regularly correlate with improved rankings, and I doubt it's all coincidence. And I actually just realized I put these images in the wrong order, so sorry about that, y'all. But for the most part, Rand continued on saying that, a lot of people started saying about, what about Forbes? They've been no-following links forever, and a lot of big publications. And, basically Rand just said, if you're focusing on Forbes, I wouldn't. Maybe Google ignores just Forbes links. But, I doubt they ignore, et cetera, which would be, other sites, right? And then, his second point is the point that I agree with, right, is that worst case, you place a guest editorial in a relevant publication and only get brand lift, attention, direct traffic, prestige. And he says, oh, no, the horror. And then, everyone started asking about correlation of this, and basically someone said, this individual asked, what is the correlation? And he said, meaning I see folks invest in guest editorials on well-regarded publications, and when they get those picked, placed with links, rankings rise. I think that's probably, causal, just not just lucky timing. And then they went on to discuss, and you should check out the thread. It's easy to find if you scroll through Rand's Twitter feed. But at the end of the day, I think one of the big things here is that, guest posting gets a bad rap mainly because of link building. But, again, for me, guest editorials and guest posting is not about link building. It's about getting, getting attention, right? It's about getting your brand out there. It's about, working with a partner or working on a relevant publication of your industry. And that has a lot of value, without the link, right? It's not about the link. And does Google ignore every single publication? If you do a guest post on a partner site, is Google really ignoring that? Do they know it's a guest post? I don't know. You know what I mean? You can't really say definitively the answer is yes. John's saying that there's zero value, but that would mean that Google understands every single publication on the internet and understands that it is that you are guest posting on it. It just seems like a lot of factors to go in that it would never have any correlation to one another. But at the end of the day, the thing about guest posts is that, you should do this. You should get, posts and blogs up on, relevant publications. You should do that on partner sites. I think that's one of those things where a lot of people get held up because it's so associated with link building that people avoid it. But there's actually a lot of positives there. And I think Rand actually knocked on all of them: brand lift, attention, direct traffic, prestige. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with that. So don't kick that out of your digital arsenal just yet, or your plan, as long as it makes sense to, right? And if you're not just saying, hey, I just want the link, write a really good post. Find a publication that makes sense for it. Find a partner that'll post it. Allow them to post on your site. I don't think that there's really anything wrong with that. But at the end of the day, that's what Google said. And I'll leave it at that. The next slide. So I kind of wanted to talk about this, and this is more about when I, every once in a while I'll put something in here that I've experienced as a leader at Conductor, but also just throughout my career, and something that's really helped, me kind of break through some walls and get some things out. So a lot of times, when you build something new, it is messy, right? Whenever you ship a new piece of code, or you put something into beta, or you get something out into the world to get feedback, you're always at V1, right? And there's a lot of leadership books that quote this, is that if you want to get to V5, you have to get to V1. You're never going to make it perfect, right? And I think that that's something that a lot of people are afraid of. And I've experienced this, throughout my time at Conductor, and even in my previous life, when I remember when I started my first company called One Click Appliances, we got our first site up, and the site was hideous. It was super ugly, and didn't work that well. We got a lot of negative feedback from customers and people that, the site was not working well. And, me and my old partner, Mark, just said, like, hey, listen, we understand this, but, we're not afraid to, make this site work. And we believed in it while we were very young, and we felt like crap, about, like all the feedback we were getting. We were never afraid to get that, to get to that next version, to always go to V2 and then V3 and then V4. And, when we broke through and ultimately, over the course of the lifetime of the business, over the next 3 or 4 years, or 3 years it was, we built a really pretty site that worked really well and generated a lot of money. And, had we just given up on the first version of the site, none of that would have happened. And, we learned a lot along the way. At Conductor, it's been interesting because as many people know, I was a customer of Conductor's before I worked here. So I've been involved with the company for about 10, 11 years. I've known Seth a really long time. And I used to work at an agency called Prime Visibility, which is now part of W Promote. And I was one of the first agencies to buy Searchlight, and V1 of Searchlight was not that great, and Seth will admit this as well, that it was, it did a few things really well, but it didn't do a lot. But at the end of the day, it really wasn't that great of a product, right? But at the end of the day, it did a couple of things really well, and the idea was really good, and the structure was really good, and the team was really good. And I believed in Seth, and I believed in that version. But more importantly, Seth believed in that version. He tells this story all the time, just about the history of Conductor, and as he's been, building the product over time. And when you look at what V1 of Searchlight was, and you look at, the version that we're at now and the version that we're about to release with some of the new features we're about to release, which are some of the most exciting features that I've ever had the pleasure of working on. It's one of those things where you kind of take a step back and you're like, man, had we been afraid of the first version of this, or had Seth rather been afraid of the first version of this, we never would have gotten to the next version and to the next version and to the version we're about to release, which is the best version the product it has seen to date, and it will only get better from there. And for me personally, I've built a lot of stuff at Conductor, over the years. And I remember that when I first came here, I was working, with my good friend Stefan Bajayo, and we were building our professional services arm. And that professional services arm, needed services built. And I was the, one of the first hands-on SEOs that worked at the company. And I started to do migrations for people. I started to do site audits for people. And ultimately, started what became our managed services at the time, and then evolved into Orchestra, which it is today, where we combined with the CSM team, and, gave me the opportunity I have today. And, at the end of the day, I look back at everything I've built here, and the first versions of all of those were terrible. When you really think about it, were they valuable? 100%. Did they give the insight? 100%. But I look back at some of the stuff that I've built now, or some of the stuff that has stood the test of time and that we've iterated on, and I'm very proud, of those first versions, because, they got the idea across the table. They got people thinking. They got customers, they got customers involved. And I always think about this because I have a lot of people, ask me, it's like, oh, we just rolled out this thing. We just built this thing, and I don't know if it's going to work. I'm a little worried about it. We're not getting great feedback about it. But, if you're in that case, just kind of wrap it all up before we get to questions. If you're in that situation, you should never be afraid of the first version of something. You should always want to get to the next version, and don't try to make something perfect right out of the gate, because if you never get to V1, you'll never get to V5, and you'll never get to V10. And, even if the first thing that you roll out isn't great, you're going to get so many learnings back. You're going to get so much great feedback back. And that's something that is invaluable when you're building something and getting it to a great version. And I've been through that many times. I can tell you from experience, it's extremely rewarding to look back at those prototypes and look at what, what's built today, and you'll be very proud of it. So with that, we will move on and say, was there an algorithm update on the 15th of August? I don't know, probably, guys, but you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because as I end most of the presentations here, the only thing that really matters is creating great content and, kind of going and making it make sense for the customer, to connect them with what they're thinking about and ultimately with what they love and what they want to read about and what they want to ingest. So don't worry about algorithm updates. Again, when big ones roll out, I will report on them. The one on the 15th is still something. There is definitely something going on, but don't chase algorithms. Don't worry about it. Just make your site awesome. Make your content awesome. And with that, the summer is coming to a close. I'm heading out on vacation next week, first one in 6 months. I'm not doing much because we can't really go anywhere, but at the end of the day, I'm going to take a break. But I say this every month, before I get into the questions. This is my favorite part of my job, and I would not be able to do it without any of you, and I always am very humbled that you take the time out of your very busy schedules, because your time is very important, and I appreciate it so much. So I'm just going to get to the couple of questions that we have here, and then we'll wrap it up. For guest links, aren't you supposed to no follow links on guest posts for publications? Yes, that is correct. The answer is correct. Yes. So if you do post on a publication, they are supposed to no follow those links regardless. So so really, link equity really shouldn't be flowing through those articles in any way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, that is one of those things that a lot of people are still afraid of guest posting, because it's so associated with link building, and link building is so dangerous. In SEO, if it's when you're not doing it in a really careful way. So, but that's a great question. But yes, that is what you are supposed to do. So that's something to take away. Okay. And let's see, we have time for one more question, and this is about, oh, yes, in 2020, this is more of a comment. No, yes, 2020 has been a tough year, in SEO, I suppose, but 2020 has been a tough year in general. The Google bug is really a bummer, that happened, but at the end of the day, it didn't really impact anybody for a long period of time, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. That's all the questions we have, and with that, everybody, thank you so much. Again, always enjoy speaking to you. Appreciate that you take give me 30 minutes of your very, very important time. It's my favorite part of my job, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you. Thank you all so much, and I will see you next month.